Great! Let's prove some of the most famous results in geometry. Among them are Euler's Formula and Gauss-Bonnet Theorem for Polyhedra. The proofs will be constructive in the most literal sense because I'll be using these tiles, which I had manufactured and delivered by PCBWay. If you like them too, just visit their website, upload the STL file you want to print, choose the quantity, material, color, and all the other parameters you want, then request a quote. Shipping is fast and the quality, well, see for yourselves, the joints are simple and sturdy and the tiles rotate smoothly. In the description you'll find the STL files for both the individual pieces and a ready-to-print set. You'll also find a referral link that gives you a discount on your first order. Using these tiles, we can build a variety of polyhedra that is solids bounded by flat polygonal faces. The line segments shared by two faces are called edges, while the points where several edges meet are called vertices. For example, this polyhedron has 7 faces, 12 edges, and 7 vertices. In 1758, Euler discovered a remarkable relationship linking exactly these 3 quantities. In fact, for every convex polyhedron, the number of faces f minus the number of edges e plus the number of vertices v is always equal to 2. We'll use this dodecahedron throughout the proof, but it will represent an arbitrary convex polyhedron with f faces, e edges, and v vertices. Let's denote the quantity f minus e plus v by the Greek letter chi. Our goal is to prove that chi is equal to 2. We'll do this by dismantling the polyhedron one tile at a time. Let's begin. Choose any face and remove it. What remains is no longer a polyhedron because it is not longer completely enclosed by polygonal faces. We now have an opening. Nevertheless, we can still compute f minus e plus v for this new object. In our count, we'll continue to include the edges and vertices lying on the boundary created by the removed face. Compared with the original polyhedron, we have lost one face. While the numbers of edges and vertices remain unchanged, they are still here. Consequently, the value of f minus e plus v has simply decreased by 1. Now comes the key step of the proof. From this point on, I'll show that every tile we remove leaves the value of f minus e plus v unchanged. So it will always remain equal to chi minus 1. To make this work, however, we have to choose a face with a very specific property. It must have at least one edge on the boundary, and all the boundary edges and vertices belonging to the face must form a single connected chain with no interruption. Let me explain. Look at this example. In this first tile, the boundary edges and vertices are split into 2 separate groups, so this one won't work. In this tile, on the other hand, all the boundary edges and vertices belong to a single connected chain. That's exactly what we need. For convex polyhedra, it can be proved that such a face always exists, so let's return to our model. This tile satisfies the required property. Let's remove it. What has changed? We have lost one face and one edge. All the other edges are still present, as are all the vertices. Since both f and e decrease by 1, the value of f minus e plus v remains unchanged. Let's remove another tile, this one. This time, we lose one face, 2 edges, and 1 vertex, the one shared by the 2 removed edges. Once again, these changes exactly balance each other, so the value of f minus e plus v is still equal to chi minus 1. Can we prove this in general? Suppose we remove a tile whose boundary consists of a single connected chain of edges and vertices. Assume that this chain contains n boundary edges. Removing the tile eliminates one face and n edges. The number of eliminated vertices is n-1, namely those lying between consecutive removed edges. As anticipated, these changes cancel each other out, so the value of f minus e plus v remains unchanged. By continuing in exactly the same way, the polyhedron will eventually be completely dismantled until only a single face remains, that is an ordinary polygon with n sides. Throughout the entire process, f minus e plus v has remained equal to chi minus 1. But a polygon has one face, n edges, and n vertices. Therefore, chi minus 1 must be equal to 1. And consequently, chi is equal to 2. Euler's formula is proved. However, take a look at this polyhedron. This one is a toroidal polyhedron. I'll simply tell you that it has 42 faces, 64 edges, and 22 vertices. If we compute f minus e plus v, we don't get 2. We get 0. Why? The answer lies precisely in the proof we've just completed. While dismantling the polyhedron, we always choose a tile whose boundary edges and vertices formed a single connected chain. In convex polyhedra, such a tile always exists, but in general it may not. If we try to dismantle this toroidal polyhedron, we eventually reach a stage where every remaining tile has its boundary edges and vertices split into separate chains. The general statement of Euler's formula is different. F minus e plus v is equal to 2 minus twice g, where g is the number of holes in the original polyhedron, and we are talking about holes in the topological sense, like this one here, as the hole in a donut. The quantity 2 minus twice g is called the Euler characteristic. It is denoted by the Greek letter chi, and it is a topological invariant of surfaces. To understand what this means, imagine you have two closed orientable surfaces embedded in space that look completely different. Suppose you want to know whether one can be continuously deformed into the other, without tearing or gluing. You can discretize both surfaces into polyhedra, just as is done in computer graphics, and compute f minus e plus v. If the result is the same, then the deformation is possible. Otherwise, it isn't. Pretty cool, isn't it? Now, let's move on to another famous result. Once again, this dodecahedron will represent an arbitrary polyhedron. For each vertex v, we define the angular defect k of v as the difference between a full angle and the sum of the face angles meeting at that vertex. In a dodecahedron, for example, 3 pentagons meet at every vertex. Each interior angle of a regular pentagon measures 108 degrees. So the angular defect at every vertex is 360 degrees minus 3 times 108 degrees, which is 36 degrees. The Gauss-Bonnet Theorem states that if we add up the angular defects of all the vertices of a convex polyhedron, the result is always 720 degrees. Indeed, the dodecahedron has 20 vertices, each with an angular defect of 36 degrees, giving a total of 720 degrees. In its most general form, the theorem states that this sum is equal to 360 degrees multiplied by the Euler characteristic of the polyhedron. Let's prove it. The first step is to triangulate every face of the polyhedron. This can always be done by subdividing each face into triangles, adding a few extra vertices and edges inside the faces. This operation introduces new vertices, but it does not change the left-hand side of the theorem. Why? Because all the newly introduced vertices lie in flat faces, so their angular defect is 0. Triangulating the polyhedron gives us an important advantage. If we replace the definition of the angular defect inside the sum, we obtain one full angle for each vertex, minus the sum of all the angles appearing in the faces of the polyhedron. Now we use the fact that every face is a triangle, and the interior angles of every triangle add up to 180 degrees. Therefore, the sum of all face angles is simply 180 degrees multiplied by the number f of triangular faces. On the other hand, Euler's formula tells us that the Euler characteristic chi is equal to f minus e plus v, Since all the faces are triangles, we can express the number of edges in terms of the number of faces. Every triangular face has 3 edges, but every edge belongs to exactly 2 triangles. Therefore, the total number of edges is equal to 3 times the number of faces divided by 2. Substituting this relation into Euler's formula, we find that chi is equal to the number of vertices minus 1/2 of the number of faces. If we now multiply this by 360 degrees, we obtain exactly the same expression that we previously derived by summing the angular defects. And this proves the theorem. The Gauss-Bonnet theorem has many remarkable applications in geometry. Let me show you one of them. Imagine that our polyhedron is actually a discretization of a smooth closed surface. In that case, the angular defect approximates the Gaussian curvature of the surface, and the approximation becomes more accurate as the discretizations becomes finer. As a consequence, the integral of the Gaussian curvature over the entire closed surface is equal to 360 degrees, or if you prefer 2 pi radians, multiplied by the Euler characteristic of the surface. In other words, the Gauss-Bonnet theorem establishes a deep connection between a purely geometric quantity, curvature, and a purely topological one, namely the number of holes in the surface. This means that geometry and topology are not independent subjects. In higher dimension, something similar happens as well. The curvature of our universe places important restrictions on the kinds of shapes it can have, and vice versa. There's a lot more to say about this, subscribe to the channel and we'll talk about it in a future video, I promise. I'd like to finish with one last proof that is particularly well suited to these tiles. The question is very simple. Why are there exactly 5 Platonic solids? First of all, let me recall that a Platonic solid is a convex polyhedron whose faces are all congruent regular polygons and whose vertices are all congruent. In this context, that means that the same number of faces meet at every vertex. More generally, 2 vertices are congruent if one can be mapped onto the other by a rigid motion. Take a look at these vertices. They are built from exactly the same faces, but their openings are different. For this reason, they are not considered congruent. So, let's try to construct every possible Platonic solid, starting with triangular faces, then moving on to squares, pentagons, and so on. Let's begin with triangles. 2 triangles aren't enough to form a vertex, but 3 are. The same is true for 4, 5, and so on. However, if we try using 6 or more triangles, something interesting happens. The surface can no longer remain convex. See how it starts to crumple? The reason is simple. The sum of the angles meeting at a vertex reaches or even exceeds 360 degrees. When that happens, the surface can no longer bend to the same side, so convexity is inevitably lost. That leaves only 3 possibilities for triangular faces. If we require every vertex to be formed by 3 triangles, the construction closes by adding just one more tile, giving us the tetrahedron. If instead we require 4 triangles at every vertex, the structure initially seems quite flexible, and one might imagine that several completions are possible. In reality, as the construction progresses, the model becomes more and more rigid. This is a consequence of Cauchy's rigidity theorem. In the end, only one completion is possible, in this case the octahedron. Exactly the same phenomenon occurs when 5 triangles meet at every vertex. Once again, the construction closes in only one way, producing the icosahedron. Having exhausted the triangular case, let's move on to squares. Every vertex must be formed by at least 3 faces. On the other hand, 4 square faces already add up to 360 degrees, so convexity would be lost. Therefore, there is only one possible configuration, and its completion gives us the cube. Now, Let's consider pentagons. Here again, no more than 3 faces can meet at each vertex. Even so, we can still obtain a fifth and final Platonic solid, the dodecahedron. But why aren't there any Platonic solids with hexagonal faces, heptagonal faces, or polygons with even more sides? Because starting from the regular hexagon, every interior angle measures at least 120 degrees. As soon as 3 or more such angles meet at a vertex, they reach or exceed 360 degrees, and convexity is lost. Of course, this doesn't mean that no other convex polyhedra with regular faces exist. The picture becomes much richer as soon as we allow different kinds of regular polygons to appear in the same polyhedron. If this topic interests you, I recommend watching the previous video on this channel. Using an argument very similar to the one we have just seen, you can also show that there are only finitely many admissible convex vertex configurations and that, apart from prisms and antiprisms, there are only finitely many convex polyhedra with regular faces. A good starting point is a result by Grünbaum and Johnson. I'll leave a link to the paper in the description. I hope this video has shown you that many deep results in geometry can be discovered not only by using your mind, but also by using your hands. See you in the next video. In the meantime, don't panic.